My beloved child, do not scroll away from this moment. Pause for a second, breathe slowly, because what is happening right now is not random. You may think you simply clicked on another video. You may believe this appeared before you by accident, just another message among thousands of voices fighting for your attention. But listen to me carefully now. This message was not an accident. You were guided here. Before your finger touched the screen, before your eyes saw these words, before this very day even began, I already knew this moment would happen. And deep inside your spirit, something already recognizes that truth. That strange feeling pulling at your heart right now. That quiet heaviness in your chest. That sudden urge to stop and listen. That is not coincidence. That is my presence drawing near to you. My child, there are moments in life that appear ordinary on the surface, yet hidden beneath them is a divine interruption that changes everything forever. This is one of those moments. Do not dismiss it. Do not rush past it, because something has already begun shifting inside you, even before you fully understand why. You have asked for signs. You have cried in silence when no one else could hear you. You have wondered if I still saw you after all the disappointment, after all the waiting, after all the nights you stared into the darkness wondering when your life would finally change. And now here you are, not by chance, not by luck, but by design. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Jeremiah 1:5. Yes, my child, I knew you long before this world ever spoke your name, long before people misunderstood you, long before heartbreak entered your life, long before the exhaustion, long before the fear, long before the betrayal that left you questioning your worth. I knew every tear you would cry. I knew every hidden battle you would fight in silence. And still, I chose you. Let that settle into your spirit for a moment. You were chosen knowingly, not after you became strong, not after you became perfect, not after you finally figured everything out. I chose you while already knowing your wounds. I chose you while already seeing your future struggles. I chose you before the world ever had the chance to reject you. My beloved, there is a reason your soul feels restless lately. There is a reason ordinary distractions no longer satisfy you the way they once did. There is a reason you have felt different from the people around you, even when you could not explain it. Because I have been quietly awakening something inside you, and what is awakening cannot return to sleep again. Listen closely now, this next part matters deeply. The enemy hoped you would scroll away before hearing this. The enemy hoped your mind would stay distracted, busy, numb, exhausted, because the moment you truly realize that I have been guiding your life this entire time, fear begins to lose its power over you, and the darkness surrounding you starts to break. My child, you thought you were losing yourself, but in reality, you were losing the old version of yourself that could no longer follow you into your next season. That confusion you have been feeling, that emotional exhaustion, that strange mixture of sadness and anticipation, it is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that transformation has already started. You are standing between two versions of your life right now. One version is built from fear, survival, disappointment, and waiting. The other version, the one slowly unfolding before you, is built from purpose. But transitions are uncomfortable, especially when your spirit begins sensing changes before your physical eyes can see them. That is why you have felt tired lately. Not ordinary tiredness, soul tiredness, the kind of exhaustion sleep cannot fix. Because your spirit has been carrying questions your mind could not answer. Why is this happening to me? When will things finally change? Why do I feel so alone? Did God forget about me? No, my beloved, I never forgot you, not for a single second. Even during the nights you felt abandoned, I was there. Even during the moments you nearly gave up, I was there. Even when you smiled in front of others while silently breaking inside, I was there. I saw the messages you typed and deleted. I saw the tears you wiped away before anyone noticed. I saw you pretending to be okay, because you did not want to burden anyone else with your pain. But you never hid any of it from me. Not one moment, not one tear, not one silent cry for help. And that is why I brought you here today. Because you have carried this weight alone for too long. You have been trying to survive emotionally while your spirit was secretly starving for reassurance. You kept asking the world for answers that only my voice could give you. But now, you are finally listening, and that changes everything. My child, this message found you at the exact moment it was supposed to, not earlier, not later, now. Because if this message had reached you months ago, you would not have understood it. Your heart was not ready yet. But after everything you have endured, after all the sleepless nights, after all the disappointments, after all the moments you felt emotionally drained, your spirit has finally become sensitive enough to recognize my voice. That is why these words feel personal, because they are. I am speaking directly to the parts of you nobody else sees. The exhausted part, the anxious part, the lonely part. The part secretly wondering whether your future will ever become brighter than your past. Listen carefully. Your life is not falling apart. It is being repositioned. And what feels like delay was often protection. What felt like rejection was often redirection. What felt like silence was often preparation. You could not see it then. But soon, you will. A shift has already begun. Even now, while you listen to these words, something inside your spirit is waking up. You feel it, don't you? That strange sense that this message was meant specifically for you. That feeling is real. Because heaven has a way of interrupting ordinary moments to rescue weary souls before they completely lose hope. And today, heaven interrupted your scrolling, not to entertain you, not to impress you, but to remind you of who you are before the world convinced you that you were forgotten. My beloved child, you are not forgotten. You are seen, you are chosen, you are protected, and you are standing much closer to your breakthrough than you realize. But do not leave yet. Stay with me, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why your hardest season had to happen before your greatest transformation could begin. My beloved child, come closer and listen carefully now, because there is something your weary heart has needed to hear for a very long time. I saw every night you cried alone, not some of them, not only the moments when your pain became visible to others, every single one. I saw the nights when you lay awake staring into the darkness, exhausted not only in body, but in spirit. I saw the moments when your chest felt heavy for reasons you could not even explain. I saw you reaching for your phone, hoping someone would notice your silence, hoping someone would ask if you were truly okay. But instead, the room stayed quiet, and slowly you began teaching yourself how to suffer in silence. My child, you became so skilled at hiding your pain that even the people closest to you could no longer recognize when you were breaking inside. You learned how to smile while carrying sorrow, how to speak normally while anxiety consumed your thoughts, how to tell others I'm fine while your spirit quietly cried for relief. But you never hid any of it from me, not once. Thou tellest my wanderings, put thou my tears into thy bottle. Psalm 56:8. Do you understand what that means, my beloved? Your tears were never meaningless to me. Not one tear fell unnoticed. Not one silent breakdown was ignored. Not one trembling prayer disappeared into emptiness. I collected every moment. Even the moments you thought nobody cared enough to see. Especially those moments. I remember the nights when your mind would not stop racing. When fear whispered that nothing would ever change. When memories replayed themselves over and over until you felt emotionally exhausted. I remember the nights when you cried so quietly because you did not want anyone else hearing you. The nights when you buried your face into your pillow just trying to survive another wave of sadness. The nights when you asked me questions you were too afraid to ask out loud during the day. Why do I feel so alone? Why does everybody leave? Why am I fighting battles nobody understands? Why does my heart hurt this much? My child, I heard every word, even the prayers you could not finish, even the prayers that came out as tears instead of sentences, even the moments when exhaustion became so deep that all you could do was sit in silence. I understood it all, and I never abandoned you. Listen to me carefully now. This next part matters deeply. You thought your suffering meant I was distant, but often I was closest during the moments you felt most alone. When everybody else failed to notice your pain, I noticed. When nobody checked on you, I stayed beside you. When people misunderstood your silence as weakness, I understood the battle happening inside your spirit. My beloved child, there were times you nearly gave up completely, times you became tired of pretending to be strong, times you wondered whether your future would always feel this heavy, and still you survived. Do you know why? Because even when your strength disappeared, mine remained wrapped around you. You thought you carried yourself through those dark seasons alone, but you did not. I carried you through nights you do not even remember surviving. There were moments the enemy whispered that your life had no meaning. Moments when hopelessness tried to settle permanently inside your heart. Moments when disappointment became so familiar that you stopped expecting good things anymore. But I protected the small light still remaining inside you. Even when your faith became weak, I protected it. Even when you stopped believing in yourself, I never stopped believing in you. My child, I know what people said about you. I know the rejection you experienced. I know the betrayal that changed the way you trust others. I know the emotional wounds you still carry from words spoken carelessly over your life. Some people damaged you deeply and never apologized. Some people walked away without understanding what their absence would do to your heart. Some people only loved the version of you that required no emotional effort from them. And after enough disappointment, you began expecting abandonment. You started preparing yourself emotionally for people to leave before they even did. Because pain taught you to fear attachment. But listen carefully. Not everybody who left was meant to stay. And not every closed door was punishment. Some separations protected your future even when they broke your heart in the present. You could not see that before, but one day you will. My beloved, I know how exhausting it became carrying invisible pain while trying to function normally every day. People saw your body moving, but they did not see the war happening in your mind. They saw your social smile, but not the anxiety hiding underneath it. They heard your laughter, but not the sadness waiting for you after everybody went home. You became emotionally tired in ways words cannot fully describe. And yet, you kept going, even while secretly hoping someone would finally notice how much you were hurting. My child, I always noticed. There is nothing about your suffering that was hidden from me. I saw the panic attacks. I saw the overthinking. I saw the loneliness. I saw the heartbreak you never fully recovered from. I saw the exhaustion that made simple things feel overwhelming. I saw the nights when you begged for relief, but woke up still carrying the same emotional weight. And through all of it, I stayed beside you, even when you were angry with me, even when confusion filled your thoughts, even when disappointment made you emotionally distant. I never abandoned you. You may have felt spiritually numb at times. You may have wondered why my voice seemed quiet. But silence does not mean absence, and waiting does not mean abandonment. There were seasons when I kept you alive quietly because your spirit was too wounded to carry heavy revelation. So instead, I simply stayed close, holding you together in ways you could not see, protecting your mind when darkness tried consuming it, protecting your future when hopelessness whispered there was nothing left ahead for you. My beloved child, you survived more than people realize, and the fact that you are still here listening to this message proves that your story is not finished. There is still purpose attached to your life. There is still healing coming for your heart. There is still joy your future has not experienced yet. I know right now it may be difficult for you to imagine happiness without fear attached to it. Pain trained you to expect disappointment. But I am slowly teaching your spirit how to trust again. Not everybody will wound you. Not every season will break you. Not every chapter of your life will feel this heavy. A new season is approaching you now, one where your tears will no longer fall from hopelessness, but from relief. You have cried enough hidden tears, my child. You have carried silent pain long enough, and now heaven is beginning to respond to prayers you thought were forgotten. But stay with me. Do not leave this moment yet, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why the silence around you was never punishment, but preparation for the transformation already beginning inside your life. My beloved child, there is something you must finally understand about the season that almost broke you. The silence was never punishment. I know there were moments you believed I had become distant, moments when heaven felt closed, moments when your prayers seemed to disappear into emptiness. You kept waiting for answers, waiting for movement, waiting for relief, waiting for one sign that your life was finally about to change. But instead, everything became quiet, and that silence confused you, because you thought if I truly loved you, I would respond immediately. You thought my silence meant rejection. You thought the waiting meant you had somehow failed me. But listen carefully now, my precious child. The silence was not abandonment. The silence was preparation. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Do you understand what stillness truly means? Stillness is not absence. Stillness is where hidden transformation begins. There are things I can only build inside you when distractions disappear. There are revelations that only become visible when the noise around your life becomes quiet. And there are seasons where I intentionally slow everything down so your spirit can finally hear what your pain has been trying to teach you. My beloved, you kept asking me to remove the storm immediately, but what you could not see during the silence was that I was teaching you how to survive it. You thought I was delaying your blessing, but I was strengthening the version of you that would eventually carry it. Because some prayers cannot be answered safely until your spirit becomes prepared to sustain what you asked for. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. If I had given you certain things too early, they would have destroyed you instead of blessing you. Some relationships you begged for would have broken your spirit completely. Some opportunities you cried over losing would have led you far away from your purpose. Some doors remained closed because your future depended on them staying closed. But at the time, you could not see any of that. All you could feel was disappointment. You saw unanswered prayers, you saw delays, you saw loneliness, you saw silence. Meanwhile, behind that silence, I was protecting you from things your human eyes could not yet recognize. My child, there were battles happening around your life that you never even knew existed. Battles over your peace, battles over your future, battles over your identity, battles over whether you would continue believing or finally surrender to hopelessness. And while you thought nothing was happening, I was fighting for you quietly. I was preserving your mind when anxiety tried consuming you. I was preserving your heart when betrayal tried hardening it permanently. I was preserving your future while confusion blinded your understanding. You saw stillness, but heaven saw preparation. You saw delay, but heaven saw protection. You saw isolation, but heaven saw restoration beginning beneath the surface. My beloved child, do you remember how exhausted you became during those waiting seasons? Not only physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It felt like your entire life had stopped moving forward while everybody else around you continued progressing. You watched others celebrate while you quietly struggled. You watched doors open for others while your own prayers remained unanswered. And secretly, you wondered if I had forgotten you. But no, my child. I was doing some of my deepest work inside you during the seasons nobody applauded. Because hidden seasons produce deep roots, and deep roots create unshakable people. You asked me for strength, but strength is not created during easy seasons. It is formed in hidden places. It is formed when you continue walking forward while emotionally exhausted. It is formed when you continue believing while surrounded by uncertainty. It is formed when you continue praying even after disappointment visits your life repeatedly. The version of you listening right now is stronger than the version who first entered that season of silence. You may not fully recognize it yet, but you changed. Pain changed the way you see people. Waiting changed the way you value peace. Loneliness changed the way you recognize my presence. And suffering changed the depth of your spirit. You are not the same person anymore. The silence transformed you. But what you could not see during the silence was that I was also removing things from your life that could not follow you into your next season. Some attachments had to break, some illusions had to die, some false versions of yourself had to fall apart. Because where I am leading you requires emotional maturity your old life could not sustain. My beloved, sometimes I remove noise because noise prevents intimacy. You were so surrounded by distractions that you could barely hear your own spirit anymore. So I allowed stillness, not to hurt you, but to reveal you to yourself. And slowly, during the quiet seasons, you began noticing things you ignored before. You began recognizing how emotionally drained you truly were. You began seeing which people only appeared during convenient seasons. You began understanding how much fear had secretly controlled your decisions. You began realizing how often you abandoned yourself, trying to keep others comfortable. The silence exposed everything, not to shame you, but to heal you. Because healing begins when truth becomes impossible to ignore. Listen carefully now. The silence was never empty. I was speaking the entire time. Just not always in the ways you expected. I spoke through closed doors. I spoke through delays. I spoke through exhaustion. I spoke through the relationships that suddenly ended. I spoke through the uneasiness you felt in places that no longer aligned with your spirit. I spoke through your growing discomfort with superficial things. And I especially spoke through the quiet longing inside you that kept whispering, "There must be more than this." That longing was not random. That was me awakening your spirit. My child, many people run from silence because silence forces them to confront what distractions help them avoid. But you stayed, even while confused, even while hurting, even while wondering why life felt so heavy. And because you stayed, your spirit became stronger. You learned how to survive emotionally difficult seasons without losing your soul completely. You learned how to sit with pain without allowing it to define your identity. You learned how to keep breathing during moments that felt unbearable. And even though you thought you were falling apart, you were actually being rebuilt. Slowly, quietly, deeply, the waiting season was constructing a stronger foundation underneath your life. Because what I am preparing to place upon your future cannot rest upon fragile ground. You asked for breakthrough, but breakthrough requires preparation. You asked for purpose, but purpose requires transformation. You asked for peace, but true peace only comes after illusions collapse. And yes, my beloved, some illusions needed to collapse. The illusion that people could save you. The illusion that achievement alone would heal your emptiness. The illusion that constant movement could silence your inner pain. The illusion that you had to earn love through exhaustion. I allowed silence to strip away those false beliefs one by one. And now, after everything you survived, your spirit is finally becoming ready for clarity. Stay with me now. Do not miss this next revelation, because soon you will begin noticing something extraordinary. The very season you once called abandonment will eventually become the season you thank me for the most. Not because it was painless, but because it transformed you into someone deeper, someone wiser, someone spiritually awake, someone capable of carrying the future that is now slowly approaching your life. My beloved child, you were never buried during those silent seasons. You were planted, and planted things do not remain hidden forever. At the right time, they rise. At the right time, they bloom. At the right time, everything hidden beneath the surface finally reveals the purpose of the waiting. And your time of revealing is closer than you realize, but stay close, because what I am about to show you next will explain why certain battles around your life became so intense the moment your transformation truly began. My beloved child, there is something I must reveal to you now that you could not fully understand before. Some of the heaviness you carried was never meant to destroy you. Some of the strange resistance around your life, the confusion, the exhaustion, the sudden emotional attacks, the fear that appeared without warning was evidence that something valuable inside you was being targeted. Listen carefully, not every battle is visible, and not every attack arrives in obvious ways. Sometimes darkness works quietly, slowly, patiently, trying to wear down your spirit before you ever discover who you truly are. But hear me now, my child. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Notice what I said. The weapon may form, the battle may become intense, the pressure may feel overwhelming, but it will not prosper against the life I have marked for purpose. You thought you were simply unlucky. You thought life was randomly difficult for you. You thought your emotional exhaustion meant weakness. But what you could not see was that there were unseen battles surrounding your future, battles over your peace, battles over your identity, battles over your calling, because darkness fears awakened people, and your spirit was beginning to awaken. My beloved, there were moments you almost gave up completely, moments you felt sudden hopelessness for no clear reason, moments fear entered your thoughts so intensely that you wondered what was happening to you. Moments when anxiety tried convincing you that your future would never improve. Moments when you felt emotionally drained after being around certain people, even when nothing obvious happened outwardly. You thought it was only stress, only exhaustion, only emotional sensitivity. But some of those moments were spiritual warfare happening quietly around your life. The enemy hoped to exhaust you before your breakthrough arrived. Because exhausted people stop expecting miracles. Exhausted people stop dreaming. Exhausted people stop believing they are chosen. And slowly, they begin settling for survival instead of purpose. But I would not allow darkness to steal what belongs to me. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. There were attacks you survived without ever realizing how close you came to breaking. There were moments danger surrounded you and you never even knew it. Moments I redirected your steps. Moments I delayed certain plans. Moments I removed people from your life because they carried destruction your heart could not yet discern. You cried over some separations without realizing those separations preserved your future. You mourned doors that closed without knowing what would have happened behind them. You called some seasons disappointment, while heaven called them rescue. My child, I protected you quietly. There were nights you should have collapsed emotionally, yet somehow you kept breathing. There were seasons when the pressure upon your mind became unbearable, yet something deep inside you refused to completely surrender. That was not accidental. That was my hand sustaining you. Because even when your faith became weak, my protection remained strong around you. The enemy tried to convince you that you were forgotten. But if you were truly abandoned, you would not still be here. You survived because I covered you. You survived because purpose remained attached to your life. You survived because your story cannot end in darkness. My beloved child, there are people who encountered pain and became bitter forever. People who encountered betrayal and permanently closed their hearts. People who suffered disappointment and lost all ability to hope again. But despite everything you endured, there is still softness inside your spirit. There is still longing inside your heart. There is still a small voice inside you, whispering that your life must contain something greater than endless suffering. Do you know why? Because I protected the deepest parts of you from being completely destroyed. The enemy could wound you, but he could not own you. The enemy could pressure you, but he could not erase what I placed inside your spirit before you were born. Listen carefully now. Some attacks against your life were never about your past. They were about your future. Darkness attacks potential. Darkness attacks calling. Darkness attacks people carrying light they do not even fully recognize yet. That is why certain seasons felt unusually heavy. That is why discouragement intensified whenever you started getting close to healing. That is why confusion appeared whenever clarity began emerging. Something inside the unseen realm recognized your transformation before you did. But what darkness meant for destruction, I am turning into revelation. Because now you are beginning to see the truth. You are beginning to understand that your survival itself is evidence of divine covering. My child, there were environments draining your spirit long before you realized it. Certain conversations weakened your peace, certain people fed your anxiety, certain places slowly disconnected you from your inner calm. And because your spirit was sensitive, you absorbed more than you understood. You kept blaming yourself for feeling overwhelmed. But some atmospheres around you carried heaviness. Your soul was never designed to live inside permanently. That is why I began separating you. That is why certain friendships faded. That is why some connections suddenly became uncomfortable. That is why your spirit started feeling restless in places where you once felt comfortable. I was pulling you away from environments that could not sustain your next season. But at the time, it only felt lonely. My beloved, sometimes protection feels painful before it feels peaceful. Because your human heart grieves what your spirit secretly knows must end. You wanted certain people to stay. You wanted certain situations to work. You wanted certain prayers answered exactly the way you imagined. But I could see beyond the present moment. I could see what would eventually wound you. So I intervened quietly, not to punish you, but to preserve you. And one day you will look back and realize that many unanswered prayers were actually hidden mercies. Listen closely. The enemy's greatest strategy was never only external attacks. It was internal exhaustion, to make you emotionally tired enough to stop believing, to make you spiritually numb enough to stop listening, to make you overthink until fear became louder than my voice, to convince you that healing would never come. But my child, the fact that you are still seeking me after everything you survived proves darkness didn't win. You are still here, still listening, still hoping, still breathing. And that terrifies the forces that tried to break you. Because they know something you are only beginning to discover. Your life carries purpose, your pain carries meaning, and your transformation has already started. But stay with me now, because this next revelation is important. Not every battle around your life has ended yet. There are still forces that want to distract you from what is awakening inside you. That is why you must protect your peace now more than ever. Guard what enters your spirit. Guard what you repeatedly listen to. Guard the voices shaping your thoughts, because what you feed grows stronger inside you. Feed fear and fear expands. Feed hopelessness and darkness deepens. But feed your spirit truth, and light begins returning to places inside you that once felt dead. My beloved child, you are not crazy for sensing shifts around your life lately. You are becoming spiritually aware. You are beginning to recognize what drains you and what gives life to your spirit. You are beginning to notice when something feels wrong beneath the surface. You are beginning to understand that not every smiling face carries pure intentions. And this awareness is not meant to make you fearful. It is meant to make you wise. Because I am teaching you discernment. The next season of your life requires clearer vision than the last one. And slowly, through every battle, every disappointment, every hidden attack, every lonely night, your discernment has been growing. You are no longer the same vulnerable soul who entered the storm. You have changed. The warfare revealed your strength. The pressure revealed your resilience. And the attacks revealed just how protected you truly were all along. But do not relax completely yet. because what I am about to reveal next will explain why certain people had to leave your life before your breakthrough could fully begin. My beloved child, I know there are still names that hurt your heart when you remember them. Certain faces, certain conversations, certain goodbyes you never fully healed from. You tell yourself you are over it. You try convincing yourself the pain no longer affects you. But deep inside, part of your spirit still wonders why they left, why they changed, why they became cold, why they walked away after everything you gave them. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, you still replay those memories in your mind, wondering what you could have done differently, wondering whether you were not enough, wondering why people you loved became part of your pain. But listen to me carefully now, my precious child. The people who left were not the loss you thought they were. I know that truth feels difficult to accept, because your heart connected deeply, you loved sincerely. You stayed loyal even when others became distant, and when they left, it felt like part of your world collapsed with them. But what you could not see at the time was that some departures were acts of divine protection. All things work together for good. Romans 8:28. Not some things, all things, even heartbreak, even betrayal, even rejection, even the endings that shattered your expectations. My beloved, you thought the pain came because you lost something valuable. But soon you will understand why they had to leave. Because not everyone assigned to your past is qualified to enter your future. Some people were only meant to accompany one chapter of your life. And when their assignment ended, I removed them before their presence began destroying what I was building inside you. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. There were people around you who benefited from your kindness, but could not honor your heart. People who loved your presence, but not your healing. People who enjoyed receiving from you while slowly draining your peace. People who became comfortable with the wounded version of you because your brokenness made you easier to control. And if I had allowed them to remain forever, they would have delayed your transformation. My child, you cried because you thought rejection meant you were unwanted. But sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes separation is rescue. Sometimes the closed door is the very thing protecting your spirit from future devastation. You only saw the ending. I saw what would have happened if it continued. There are conversations you never heard, intentions you never discovered, manipulations hidden beneath smiles. And while you begged me to hold certain relationships together, I was quietly protecting your future from what your emotions could not yet discern. That is why some people disappeared suddenly. That is why certain relationships became uncomfortable. That is why your spirit began feeling restless around people you once trusted completely. Your discernment was awakening. And the more your spirit awakened, the harder it became for darkness to remain hidden around you. My beloved child, some people left because they could not follow where I am taking you. Your next season requires peace, it requires healing, it requires clarity. And certain individuals only carried confusion, instability, and emotional exhaustion into your life. You kept trying to save connections that were silently destroying you. You kept asking me to restore relationships I was trying to release from your hands, because your heart confused attachment with assignment. But not every attachment is meant to become permanent. Listen carefully. You were never difficult to love. You were simply trying to receive permanent loyalty from temporary people. And temporary people often leave when they can no longer benefit from your emotional energy. I know that truth hurts, but healing begins when truth becomes visible. My child, there are wounds inside you that formed because you kept blaming yourself for other people's inability to love correctly. You questioned your worth after every abandonment. You questioned your value after every betrayal. You questioned your identity every time someone failed to appreciate your heart. But another person's inability to honor you does not cancel the value I placed inside you. You were never unworthy. You were simply surrounded by people who lacked the capacity to recognize what they were holding. A starving person cannot fully value a garden, and wounded people often mishandle pure hearts. My beloved, I know some betrayals changed you deeply. I know trust became harder after certain disappointments. I know part of you now fears emotional closeness because pain taught you that attachment can become dangerous. But do not allow betrayal to harden the beautiful parts of your spirit. Do not let temporary heartbreak convince you that genuine love no longer exists. Because what hurt you was not love, it was misalignment. And misaligned people cannot remain forever where purpose is awakening. Listen closely now. I need you to release the bitterness you are still secretly carrying. Not because what they did was acceptable, not because your pain was imaginary, but because bitterness chains your spirit to the very season I am trying to free you from. Forgiveness does not mean pretending you were never wounded. Forgiveness means refusing to let the wound control your future identity. My child, some people will never apologize properly. Some people will never understand how deeply they hurt you. Some people will continue living without fully realizing the emotional damage they caused. But your healing cannot depend on their awareness. Your peace cannot remain hostage to another person's inability to change. That is why I am asking you now. Release them. Release the conversations. Release the memories replaying endlessly inside your mind. Release the need to understand every detail. Release the hope that certain people will suddenly become who they never had the capacity to be. Because your future cannot fully open while your heart remains trapped inside old pain. Comment Amen if you believe God protected you even when you didn't understand. My beloved child, you are entering a season where emotional clarity will begin replacing confusion. Soon you will look back and realize that some endings saved your life spiritually. You will understand why certain people had to disappear before your healing could fully begin. You will understand why your spirit felt exhausted after certain conversations. You will understand why your peace kept leaving whenever particular people returned. And one day, instead of crying over who left, you will thank me for removing what could not continue into your destiny. But stay with me now, because there is another truth you still do not fully see. Some people left because your transformation intimidated them. The moment your spirit began awakening, the moment your standards began changing, the moment you started valuing peace more than chaos, certain connections could no longer remain comfortable around you. Because healing changes people. Awakened people no longer tolerate what wounded versions of themselves once accepted. And not everybody celebrates your healing. Some people preferred the version of you that lacked boundaries, the version that overgave, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that stayed emotionally available while receiving almost nothing in return. But now, you are changing. And your changing exposed who truly belonged in your life. My child, I did not remove people to make your life empty. I removed them to make room for what aligns with your future, because where I am leading you next requires lighter emotional baggage. You cannot carry old wounds, old attachments, and old identities into the season now approaching your life. Something new is beginning, a deeper peace, a clearer understanding, a stronger version of yourself. And the painful separations were not signs that your life was falling apart. They were signs that your spirit was finally outgrowing what no longer matched your calling. But do not rush ahead yet, stay close, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why your breaking point was actually the beginning of your awakening. My beloved child, there is a truth about your pain that you could not understand while you were living through it. Your breaking point was not the end of you. It was the beginning of your awakening. I know there were moments when you truly believed you could not continue any longer. Moments when the emotional weight became so heavy that even getting through an ordinary day felt exhausting. Moments when you smiled outwardly while inwardly feeling like everything inside you was collapsing. And secretly, you wondered if you were losing yourself. But listen to me carefully now. You were not losing yourself. You were losing the version of yourself that could no longer survive where I am taking you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Do you understand what that means, my precious child? It means your weakness was never wasted. Your exhaustion was never meaningless. Your suffering was not proof of abandonment. It was the place where transformation quietly began. Because sometimes I allow the old structure to break before I reveal the new person hidden underneath it. And that is exactly what happened to you. You reached a point where pretending became impossible. Pretending you were okay. Pretending you were not hurting. Pretending you were not emotionally tired. Pretending the emptiness inside you did not exist. Everything hidden beneath the surface finally began rising into the light. And yes, it felt terrifying, because awakening often begins with collapse. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. You thought your lowest season meant you were failing, but heaven saw it differently. Heaven saw the beginning of your becoming. Because people rarely awaken while they are comfortable. Most awakenings begin inside pain, inside disappointment, inside loneliness. Inside seasons where everything familiar suddenly stops working the way it once did. That is why your old coping methods began failing. That is why distractions stopped satisfying you. That is why certain conversations started feeling empty. That is why your spirit became restless, even when outwardly nothing seemed wrong. Your soul was awakening to something deeper. My beloved, you began realizing that survival alone was not enough anymore. You wanted peace, real peace, not temporary escape, not momentary distraction, not another shallow reassurance that disappeared the next morning. You wanted something real enough to heal the exhaustion living inside your spirit. And that longing, that deep ache for something more, was the beginning of awakening. Because awakening starts the moment your soul becomes too hungry to keep feeding on empty things. You are changing, my child, even now. Even while listening to these words, you are changing. The version of you that tolerated emotional chaos is fading. The version of you that accepted constant disappointment is fading. The version of you that abandoned your own peace just to keep others comfortable is fading. And although transformation feels uncomfortable, it is holy work. Because I am rebuilding your identity from the inside outward. My beloved child, the breaking season stripped away illusions you carried for years. Illusions about people, illusions about yourself, illusions about what truly brings fulfillment. Before the breaking, you searched for validation everywhere except within my presence. You searched for worth inside relationships. You searched for identity inside achievement. You searched for peace inside temporary distractions. But eventually, everything external failed to heal the emptiness within you. And when those false foundations began collapsing, you thought your life was ending. But in reality, your awakening had begun. Listen carefully. The pain exposed what comfort kept hidden. It exposed how exhausted your spirit truly was. It exposed the fears controlling your decisions. It exposed how much of your life was built around surviving instead of truly living. And once truth became visible, you could never fully return to the person you used to be. That is why certain environments no longer feel right. That is why some conversations now drain you. That is why your tolerance for superficial things keeps decreasing. Because your spirit is evolving beyond old patterns, you are changing. And transformation always creates distance between who you were and who you are becoming. My child, there were nights you broke down emotionally because your spirit could no longer carry everything silently. You reached the limit of your own strength, and strangely, that became the very place where my strength finally became visible. Because as long as you believed you could carry everything alone, you resisted surrender. But pain humbled you. Exhaustion softened you. Disappointment opened parts of your heart that success never could. And in that broken place, you finally began listening differently, praying differently, seeking differently. The old version of you wanted relief. The awakened version of you wants truth, and truth changes everything. My beloved, you keep calling yourself weak because you cried, because you struggled, because anxiety overwhelmed you, because fear visited your mind repeatedly. But weakness is not the absence of strength. Sometimes weakness is simply the doorway through which transformation enters. You survived things that should have destroyed your peace completely. You survived nights that felt unbearable. You survived emotional battles nobody else even knew you were fighting. And despite everything, you are still here, still breathing, still searching, still hoping. That is not weakness. That is resilience being formed inside hidden suffering. Listen closely now. There is a reason your spirit feels different lately. A reason you no longer fully fit inside old versions of yourself. A reason you sense something shifting within you even before your outer life changes visibly. Because awakening begins internally first, before doors open externally, before blessings arrive visibly, before circumstances transform publicly. The spirit awakens privately. And your spirit is awakening now. You are beginning to see yourself differently, beginning to recognize your worth differently, beginning to understand that your suffering did not disqualify you, it prepared you. My beloved child, one day you will realize that your lowest season produced your deepest wisdom. The heartbreak taught discernment. The loneliness taught intimacy with me. The silence taught spiritual awareness. The betrayal taught boundaries. The exhaustion taught surrender. And the breaking awakened the real you hidden underneath years of survival. You are no longer merely existing. You are becoming conscious of your purpose. That is why certain things can no longer hold you the way they once did. Because awakened souls cannot comfortably return to spiritual sleep. You are changing. And yes, transformation feels lonely sometimes. Because not everybody understands the version of you emerging from the pain. Some people only recognize the old you, the smaller you, the wounded you, the version that stayed quiet to avoid rejection. But now, something inside you is rising, something stronger, something clearer, something spiritually alive. And even though fear still tries visiting your thoughts, it no longer owns your identity the way it once did. Because deep inside your spirit, you are beginning to realize something powerful. You survived every season that tried to break you. And if you survived that, then perhaps your future truly is bigger than your fear. My beloved, do not despise the breaking season anymore. Without it, your awakening would never have happened. Without it, you would still be asleep inside patterns that were quietly destroying your peace. Without it, you would never have discovered the strength hidden inside your spirit. The pain revealed you to yourself. And now, you are becoming someone new. But stay close, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why the version of you that is awakening now can never return to the life you once settled for. My beloved child, I know the changes happening inside you have felt unsettling. There are moments lately when you barely recognize yourself. Your emotions shift unexpectedly. Your energy rises and falls without warning. Some days you feel strong and full of clarity, and other days you feel emotionally overwhelmed for reasons you cannot explain. You have questioned yourself quietly, wondering if something is wrong with you, wondering why you suddenly feel disconnected from old habits, old desires, even certain people who once felt familiar. And secretly, part of you fears you are falling apart. But listen to me carefully now, my precious child. You are not falling apart. You are being rebuilt. Behold, I make all things new. Revelation 21:5, not repaired temporarily, not distracted briefly, made new. Do you understand what that means? It means the old version of you cannot remain untouched while transformation is taking place. Something deep inside you is shifting. Old ways of thinking are breaking. Old emotional patterns are collapsing. Old identities built from fear, survival, and pain are losing their grip on your spirit. And yes, that process feels uncomfortable, because every transformation creates a season where the old self is fading while the new self is still emerging. That in-between season can feel confusing. You no longer fully connect with who you used to be, but you have not completely stepped into who you are becoming either. So for a while, you feel suspended between two identities, and that emotional instability has frightened you. But my beloved, this is not destruction. This is transition. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. Caterpillars do not understand what is happening while they are inside the cocoon. Everything familiar dissolves before something new emerges. And spiritually, something similar has been happening inside you. The old version of you is dissolving. The version built entirely around survival. The version that stayed silent to avoid rejection. The version that accepted less than you deserved because loneliness frightened you. The version that carried emotional pain without ever truly healing it. The version that constantly overthought every situation because fear convinced you peace was unsafe. That version cannot follow you where I am leading you next. So I began removing it slowly, not to hurt you, but to free you, my child. You keep calling this season confusion, but heaven calls it transformation. You keep thinking your emotions are unstable, but your spirit is actually adjusting to a higher level of awareness. You are beginning to feel things differently now. Notice how certain conversations suddenly exhaust you. Notice how environments once comfortable now feel heavy. Notice how your tolerance for fake love, manipulation, and emotional chaos keeps decreasing. That is not weakness. That is awakening discernment. Because the new version of you cannot breathe comfortably inside spaces built for the old version. You are changing, and transformation often feels lonely before it feels peaceful. Because growth creates separation. Separation from old mindsets, old attachments, old identities, old coping patterns. And every separation feels like loss until clarity finally arrives. My beloved child, the emotional pressure you feel lately is not proof that you are broken beyond repair. It is proof that your spirit is stretching beyond limitations it once accepted. You spent so many years shrinking yourself emotionally just to survive difficult seasons. You learned how to silence your own needs, how to tolerate emotional exhaustion, how to carry burdens quietly without asking for help, how to survive while disconnected from your true self. But now, your spirit refuses to keep living that way. And that refusal is creating internal change. Listen carefully. You are becoming more honest with yourself, more aware, more spiritually awake. Things you once ignored now deeply affect you. Things you once tolerated now disturb your peace. Things you once chased no longer satisfy your soul. And while part of you misses the familiarity of your old life, another part of you knows you cannot go backward anymore. Because once awakening begins, returning to spiritual sleep becomes impossible. My beloved, you were never created merely to survive. You were created to live with peace, clarity, purpose, and truth. But before those things could fully grow inside you, the false version of yourself had to begin collapsing. The version created from wounds. The version shaped by rejection. The version constantly seeking approval from people who could never fully see your worth. The version terrified of abandonment. The version that believed love must always hurt. That identity was not the real you. It was a survival mask. And survival masks cannot enter the next season I prepared for your life. So now, piece by piece, I am removing it. You are changing, my child. Even your desires are changing. Your spirit no longer craves shallow distractions the way it once did. You long for peace now, for truth, for emotional safety, for deeper connection, for something real enough to heal your soul instead of temporarily numbing it. That longing is not random. It is evidence that your spirit is evolving. My beloved child, There will be moments during this transformation where you feel emotionally tired, moments where old fears suddenly resurface, moments where anxiety whispers that you are losing control. But do not panic. Healing is not always graceful. Transformation is not always comfortable. Sometimes growth feels messy before it becomes beautiful. Sometimes the rebuilding process feels like chaos before clarity arrives. But trust me now, I am still guiding every step. Even this confusion has purpose, because what feels unstable today will eventually become wisdom tomorrow. And one day you will realize something extraordinary. The very season you feared was destroying you was actually introducing you to your true self for the very first time. Listen closely now. The new version of you is already emerging. A stronger version, a wiser version, a more discerning version, a version less controlled by fear, a version no longer willing to abandon inner peace just to keep temporary people comfortable. A version beginning to understand its value. And yes, that new version still feels fragile sometimes, because growth takes time. But this is only the beginning. Do not rush your transformation. Do not condemn yourself for still healing. Do not fear the emotions rising to the surface now. What surfaces can finally be healed. What is exposed can finally be released. And what is released no longer controls your future. My beloved, I know part of you misses who you used to be, not because that version was healthier, but because it was familiar. Familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar healing. But I need you to trust me now. You are not being punished. You are being renewed. The breaking season already awakened you, and now the rebuilding season has begun. That is why your spirit keeps pulling away from what once drained it. That is why certain relationships no longer fit naturally. That is why your soul longs for stillness more than noise. That is why your heart keeps searching for meaning beyond temporary comfort. Your transformation is real. And even though others may not fully understand the changes happening inside you, heaven understands them perfectly, because I am the one leading them, my child. This new version of you will not live in constant fear the way the old version did. This new version will trust differently, love differently, discern differently, walk differently, and eventually, you will stop grieving the old identity that had to fall apart, because you will finally see who was hidden underneath it all along. The real you, the healed you, the awakened you. The version of you that suffering could not destroy. But stay with me now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why signs, confirmations, and unexpected shifts are about to begin appearing around your life very soon. My beloved child, something is about to happen that will confirm everything I have been speaking to your spirit. The next 7 days will not feel ordinary to you. Watch carefully, because signs will begin appearing in ways you did not expect. Small moments, quiet confirmations, unexpected conversations, sudden inner peace where anxiety once lived. You will begin noticing patterns that your spirit recognizes before your mind fully understands them. And when these things start happening, do not dismiss them as coincidence, because heaven often whispers before it speaks loudly. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things. Jeremiah 33:3. My child, you have spent so long searching for reassurance, searching for proof that you are not forgotten, searching for one clear sign that your life is finally moving in a different direction. And now, the answers you have been waiting for are beginning to move toward you. But listen carefully. Not every confirmation will arrive dramatically. Some will come quietly. A sudden conversation that strangely answers the question you asked me privately. A dream that lingers in your spirit long after you wake up. A repeated message appearing again and again in different places. A feeling inside your heart warning you to move away from something unhealthy. A deep sense of peace about a direction that once confused you. Watch carefully, my beloved, because your discernment is becoming sharper now. You are beginning to recognize my voice differently. Before, you only expected me to move through massive visible miracles, but now your spirit is awakening enough to recognize my presence even inside small moments. And this new awareness will guide you safely into the next season of your life. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. There are things shifting behind the scenes that you cannot fully see yet. Conversations are happening. Doors are quietly opening. Certain people are being removed from your path, while others are being positioned near your future. You may think nothing is changing externally yet, but spiritually, movement has already begun. That restless feeling inside you lately was not random. It was your spirit sensing change before your physical eyes could see it. My beloved child, the next 7 days are important because your confidence is about to be restored little by little. Not all at once, but through signs, through confirmations, through moments where you suddenly realize, I am not alone after all. You will begin noticing that certain fears no longer control you the same way. Certain situations that once drained you emotionally will start losing their power over your mind. Certain memories that once caused pain will suddenly feel lighter. This is not accidental. It is evidence that healing is already unfolding inside your spirit. Watch carefully now, because I will also speak through interruption. Some plans may suddenly change. Some delays may unexpectedly happen. Some situations may feel strangely redirected. Do not panic when this occurs. Not every interruption is an attack. Some interruptions are divine redirections protecting you from paths that no longer align with your future. My child, you are entering a season where intuition and discernment will grow stronger together. You will begin sensing who carries peace and who carries hidden chaos. You will begin recognizing environments that nourish your spirit and environments that silently drain it. You will begin hearing my warnings more clearly. And the more you trust these inner nudges, the safer your path becomes. Because I do not only protect you through visible miracles, I also protect you through quiet guidance. A feeling that says, leave. A hesitation that stops you. A sudden exhaustion around certain people. An unexplainable peace pulling you toward a different direction. These are not random emotions. These are ways I guide awakening souls. My beloved, you are no longer spiritually asleep. That is why your awareness has increased lately. That is why your spirit keeps noticing things you once ignored. You are changing, and awakened people begin perceiving life differently. Listen carefully now. Soon you will understand why certain situations felt delayed for so long, because timing matters. There are blessings that only arrive safely when your spirit is prepared to receive them. If certain doors had opened too early, you would have entered them carrying unresolved wounds. If certain opportunities had appeared before now, fear would have sabotaged them. But you are not the same person anymore. The breaking season changed you. The silence matured you. The loneliness deepened your discernment. And now, your spirit is finally becoming ready for clarity. Watch carefully during the next 7 days. Because one confirmation will lead to another. A conversation will trigger recognition. A memory will suddenly make sense. A burden you carried emotionally will begin lifting unexpectedly. And part of you will realize, I am finally moving forward. My beloved child, there is also something else I need you to understand. Not every sign will come externally. Some confirmations will happen internally. You will wake up one morning and realize the heaviness inside your chest is not as strong anymore. You will notice that fear no longer dominates your thoughts the same way. You will realize your desire for peace has become stronger than your attachment to chaos. These internal shifts are sacred because true transformation begins within before it manifests outwardly. Watch carefully now, because your dreams may also become more vivid. Not every dream carries meaning. but some will leave unusual peace or clarity inside your spirit. Some will reveal what your conscious mind has struggled to process. Some will expose fears that still need healing. And some will carry reassurance that your life is not moving backward, even when progress feels slow. Do not ignore what repeatedly returns to your attention. Patterns matter, peace matters, discernment matters. Because heaven often confirms things gradually, instead of instantly overwhelming you all at once. My beloved child, there is anticipation building around your life right now. You may not fully understand it yet, but your spirit feels it. That is why part of you suddenly feels hopeful again after such a long season of emotional exhaustion. That is why something inside you refuses to completely give up now, because deep within your soul, you can sense movement approaching. And you are correct. Something is shifting. A new rhythm is entering your life. A clearer direction, a stronger identity, a deeper peace. But this is only the beginning. Do not rush ahead emotionally. Stay close to me during this next season. Do not allow fear to interpret every delay negatively. Do not allow overthinking to silence the confirmations I am sending. And most importantly, do not return to the environments, mindsets, or relationships I already rescued you from. You have come too far to return to the darkness that once drained your spirit. My beloved, the next chapter of your life will not be built on confusion the way the last chapter was. You are learning discernment now. You are learning spiritual awareness. You are learning how to recognize my guidance instead of only reacting to fear. And that wisdom will protect your future in ways you do not yet fully realize. Watch carefully, stay aware, stay open, because very soon, something small is going to happen. And your spirit will instantly recognize it as confirmation that your transformation is real. And once that first confirmation arrives, everything else will begin making sense. But stay with me now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why your entire family line may be changing through the transformation happening inside you right now. My beloved child, there is something deeper happening in your life than you realize. Your struggle was never only about you, the battles you faced, the emotional heaviness, the cycles of pain, the loneliness, the confusion, the fear that seemed to follow generation after generation. It did not begin with you. But hear me carefully now. It can end with you. The old things are passed away. 2 Corinthians 5:17. My child, you have spent so much of your life wondering why certain patterns kept repeating, why pain seemed familiar in your family, why emotional wounds passed from one heart to another, why fear, instability, heartbreak, addiction, abandonment, anger, silence, or emotional distance kept appearing across generations. And for a long time, you blamed yourself. You thought something was wrong with you, but what you could not see was that you were born into battles older than your own memories, cycles that quietly shaped the people before you, cycles that wounded hearts long before you arrived in this world. Some people inherited survival instead of peace. Some inherited fear instead of emotional safety. Some inherited silence instead of love. And without realizing it, pain continued traveling from one generation to the next. But my beloved, you were not chosen to continue the cycle. You were chosen to confront it. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. The reason your life felt different, the reason you always sensed you did not fully belong inside certain patterns, the reason your spirit became restless around dysfunction, is because something inside you was awakening to break what previous generations could not escape. You are the cycle breaker, not because you are perfect, not because you never struggle, but because your spirit became willing to awaken instead of remaining asleep inside inherited pain. My child, many people normalize what secretly destroys them. They inherit brokenness and call it personality. They inherit fear and call it caution. They inherit emotional distance and call it independence. They inherit chaos and call it normal life. But your spirit kept resisting certain patterns, even when you could not explain why. Because deep within you, I placed the desire for something healthier, something freer, something healed. You are changing, my beloved, and your transformation is reaching farther than you realize. Because when one person heals deeply, future generations change with them. The love you learn to give differently changes future relationships. The peace you fight for changes future homes. The emotional honesty you develop changes future children. The boundaries you establish change future generations. Your awakening matters more than you understand. Listen carefully. The enemy wanted you trapped inside the same cycles that wounded those before you. Cycles of fear, cycles of rejection, cycles of emotional exhaustion, cycles of self-hatred, cycles of surviving instead of truly living. Because inherited pain often feels familiar enough to become identity. But you were never created to carry endless generational sorrow. You were created to interrupt it. My beloved child, there is a reason you feel things deeply, a reason you question unhealthy patterns, a reason your spirit longs for peace even when chaos surrounds you. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You are spiritually sensitive. And that sensitivity became the doorway through which awakening entered your life. The people before you survived the best way they knew how. Some carried wounds they never healed. Some carried burdens they never spoke about. Some buried pain so deeply that it silently shaped everyone around them. But now, through your awakening, light is entering places where silence ruled for generations. You are the interruption, the holy interruption, the moment where inherited pain finally meets healing. My beloved, I know there were times you felt isolated because you saw life differently from those around you. Times you felt misunderstood because your spirit no longer tolerated what others accepted comfortably. But do not mistake your difference for failure. Your difference is part of your calling. Because awakened people often feel alone before they fully understand their purpose. Listen closely now. You were not selected to carry shame for your family line. You were selected to bring restoration. The healing beginning inside you right now is bigger than your current emotions. Every time you choose peace over chaos, the cycle weakens. Every time you choose healing over bitterness, the cycle weakens. Every time you choose truth over denial, the cycle weakens. Every time you refuse to become emotionally cold after betrayal, the cycle weakens. And slowly, generation by generation, the old patterns begin losing power. My child, the enemy tried hard to exhaust you before this realization arrived. Because once a person recognizes they are called to break cycles, their entire identity changes. They stop seeing themselves merely as victims of pain, and they begin recognizing themselves as carriers of transformation. You are becoming aware now, aware that your life has deeper purpose, aware that your suffering was not meaningless, aware that your healing matters not only for you, but for those connected to your future. That is why your awakening feels so intense lately, because destiny is beginning to speak louder than fear. Type 1. Receive this if you are ready to break every old cycle. My beloved child, do not underestimate the importance of your survival. You survived because purpose remained attached to your life. You survived because future healing depended on your awakening. You survived because there are people not yet born who will benefit from the peace you fight for now. And even though your path has felt lonely at times, you were never abandoned. You were being prepared to become the person who changes the emotional direction of an entire bloodline. Listen carefully now. The old version of your family story does not have to continue forever. Pain does not have final authority. Fear does not have final authority. Addiction does not have final authority. Abandonment does not have final authority. The patterns stop losing power the moment someone awakens enough to confront them honestly. And that awakening is happening inside you now. You are changing. Your spirit is becoming stronger. Your discernment is becoming sharper. Your standards are becoming healthier. Your heart is learning peace instead of constant survival. And although the transformation feels uncomfortable sometimes, heaven celebrates every step of it, because healing one soul deeply can change generations quietly. My beloved, one day you will look back and realize your breaking season was never random. It was the beginning of restoration moving through your bloodline. The loneliness awakened discernment. The pain awakened compassion. The silence awakened spiritual sensitivity. And the battles awakened strength hidden inside you all along. You were chosen for more than survival. You were chosen for transformation. And this transformation is only beginning. But stay close now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why the enemy intensified the attacks against your mind right before your breakthrough began approaching your life. My beloved child, there is a reason the heaviness became so intense right before this moment. There is a reason your mind felt overwhelmed, a reason anxiety suddenly increased, a reason exhaustion wrapped itself around your spirit so strongly that some days you struggled just to keep moving forward. You thought you were simply falling apart again. But now listen carefully. The pressure intensified because breakthrough was getting closer. The thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. John 10:10. My child, the enemy does not attack empty things. Darkness does not fight what carries no purpose. The intensity surrounding your life lately was not random. It was resistance. Resistance against your awakening. Resistance against your healing. Resistance against the future beginning to unfold inside your spirit. Because something powerful happens the moment a person stops identifying with their wounds and starts recognizing their calling. And heaven knew you were approaching that moment. So the attacks intensified. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. Have you noticed how the exhaustion became worse right before clarity started appearing? How fear became louder right before your spirit began awakening? How discouragement grew stronger right before you started sensing change? That pattern is not accidental, because darkness often attacks hardest before breakthrough arrives. The enemy hoped exhaustion would stop you before transformation fully awakened inside you. He hoped anxiety would silence your discernment. He hoped emotional heaviness would convince you to retreat back into survival mode. He hoped overthinking would drown out my voice. And for a while, it almost worked. My beloved, there were nights your mind became a battlefield. Thoughts racing endlessly. Fear whispering worst-case scenarios. Memories replaying painfully. Anxiety convincing you something terrible was always about to happen. And secretly, you became tired of fighting your own thoughts. You wanted peace, just one quiet moment inside your mind. One night without fear. One morning without heaviness sitting on your chest before the day even began. I saw all of it. I saw how hard you tried to stay strong while mentally exhausted. I saw how often you smiled outwardly while inwardly feeling drained. I saw the emotional fatigue nobody else recognized. And I need you to understand something now. You were never weak for feeling overwhelmed. You were under pressure because your spirit was moving toward freedom. The enemy attacks minds that are beginning to awaken, because awakened people become dangerous to darkness. Listen carefully. The enemy wanted you distracted, emotionally tired, spiritually numb, constantly anxious. Because anxious minds struggle hearing clearly, exhausted souls struggle believing hopefully, and fearful hearts often retreat back into familiar cycles even when freedom stands nearby. That is why the attacks intensified when your transformation began accelerating. My beloved child, there were moments when the heaviness felt unnatural even to you. Moments when sadness appeared suddenly without explanation. Moments when fear rushed into your thoughts unexpectedly. Moments when hopelessness whispered lies that did not even sound like your true spirit. You blamed yourself repeatedly. You thought something was wrong with you emotionally, but part of what you were experiencing was warfare against your peace. The enemy knew something you had not fully realized yet. You were getting closer to breakthrough, closer to awakening, closer to freedom, closer to becoming the version of yourself that fear could no longer control. And darkness wanted to stop that transformation before it fully emerged. Now, listen carefully. The greatest attack was never only against your circumstances, it was against your identity. Because if the enemy could convince you that you were broken permanently, you would never step fully into your purpose. If he could convince you that healing was impossible, you would stop expecting restoration. If he could convince you that anxiety defined you, you would never discover the peace I prepared for your future. But my beloved, you are not the fear you fight. You are not the anxiety you carry. You are not the exhaustion trying to weigh down your spirit. Those things visited you, but they are not your identity. Your identity is deeper than your struggle. Your identity is rooted in what I spoke over you before fear ever touched your life. Listen closely now. This next revelation is important. The reason you survived the attacks against your mind is because I never allowed darkness full access to your spirit. Yes, the pressure was real. Yes, the exhaustion hurt deeply. Yes, the anxiety drained you. But even during your hardest nights, something inside you kept reaching toward hope. Even after disappointment, even after heartbreak, even after emotional collapse, that small remaining hope inside you was not weakness. It was evidence that my presence never left you. My child, you kept thinking you were losing the battle because you still felt fear. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is continuing forward while fear tries speaking loudly. And despite everything, you kept moving forward. You kept searching. You kept listening. You kept surviving. That means darkness did not win. The enemy tried to steal your peace, but he could not steal your purpose. He tried to destroy your confidence, but he could not destroy your calling. He tried to exhaust your spirit, but he could not erase the future I placed inside you. My beloved child, there is a reason your spirit feels different lately. A reason the fog is beginning to lift slowly. A reason clarity is starting to return in small moments. Because breakthrough is approaching now. Not fantasy, not illusion, movement, real movement. The pressure intensified because your old chains were weakening, and chains often resist loudly before they finally break. That is why your transformation felt chaotic. The old version of you was dying. The fearful version, the constantly shrinking version, the emotionally trapped version. And every chain attached to that old identity fought desperately to remain connected. But my child, they are losing power now. You are becoming more aware, more discerning, more emotionally awake. Fear still visits your thoughts sometimes, but it no longer feels permanent the way it once did. You are beginning to recognize when anxiety is lying to you, beginning to notice when your spirit needs stillness instead of panic, beginning to understand that not every fearful thought deserves agreement. That awareness is breakthrough beginning internally. Listen carefully now. The enemy attacked your mind because your mind shapes your direction. A fearful mind stays trapped. A hopeless mind stops expecting miracles. But a renewed mind, a healed mind, an awakened mind becomes impossible to control through fear. And that is exactly why darkness resisted your transformation so intensely. Because the version of you emerging now cannot be manipulated the same way anymore. You are changing, stronger internally, clearer spiritually, more aware emotionally. And although the warfare exhausted you, it also revealed how protected you truly were, because despite every attack, you are still here, still standing, still listening, still awakening. My beloved, do not fear the battle that almost broke you. The battle revealed your strength. The pressure revealed your resilience. And the survival revealed your purpose. But stay close now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain. Why one major burden you have carried for years is finally about to leave your life. My beloved child, you have carried a weight for far too long, a burden so heavy that sometimes you forgot what it felt like to breathe freely. You learned how to function while exhausted, how to smile while emotionally drained, how to continue moving forward even when your spirit felt tired beyond words. And because you carried that burden for so long, you slowly began believing it would always remain part of your life. But listen to me carefully now. Something is about to change. One major burden you have carried for years is beginning to lift. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. Matthew 11:28. My child, I never intended for you to live crushed beneath constant heaviness. You were not created to spend your entire life trapped inside fear, emotional exhaustion, confusion, or silent suffering. But pain became so familiar to you that eventually you stopped expecting relief. You adjusted to survival mode. You became accustomed to carrying emotional pressure every single day. And secretly, part of you began believing peace was something meant for other people, but not for you. But now, listen carefully. That lie is breaking, because the season ahead of you will not look like the season behind you. The burden that followed you through years of confusion is beginning to lose its grip on your spirit. And even though the change may begin quietly, you will feel it deeply. My beloved, for some of you, the burden was anxiety, constant overthinking, constant emotional tension, always expecting something bad to happen, always carrying invisible pressure inside your chest, always struggling to fully relax because your nervous system became trained by survival. But I am beginning to quiet the storm inside your mind. For others, the burden was loneliness, feeling unseen, feeling emotionally disconnected even when surrounded by people, feeling as though nobody truly understood the battles happening within your spirit. But I am bringing healing to the places isolation wounded. For others, the burden was guilt, regret over past mistakes, shame that followed you silently, the constant feeling that you somehow failed beyond repair. But my child, I did not call you to live chained to yesterday forever. And now the chains of shame are beginning to weaken. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. The burden is lifting because you are no longer the same person who first picked it up. Pain changed you. Awakening changed you. The breaking season transformed your spirit, and what once crushed you emotionally no longer has the same authority over your life. You are becoming stronger internally, wiser spiritually, more discerning emotionally. And because of that transformation, certain weights can no longer remain attached to you. My beloved child, there were moments you nearly collapsed beneath the heaviness, moments when exhaustion became so deep that you wondered if you would ever truly feel happiness again, moments when life felt emotionally colorless, like you were existing but not fully living. And even during those moments, you kept going. Do you understand how powerful that is? You survived seasons that should have destroyed your hope completely. And now heaven is responding to the endurance nobody else fully saw. Because your silent perseverance mattered, every tear mattered, every prayer mattered. Every moment you chose not to give up mattered. My child, the burden did not disappear immediately because transformation was happening beneath the surface first. I needed to heal the root before removing the weight completely. Because if the burden disappeared before your spirit healed, fear would simply recreate the same chains in another form. But now, your spirit is changing. You are learning peace, learning discernment, learning how to stop carrying responsibilities that never belong to you, learning that not every battle is yours to fight alone. And slowly, the heaviness is beginning to leave. Listen carefully. You are about to notice moments of unexpected emotional relief. Moments where your mind suddenly feels quieter. Moments where the anxiety does not dominate you the same way. Moments where laughter feels natural again instead of forced. moments where hope quietly returns without needing permission. Do not ignore those moments. Those moments are confirmation that healing is already unfolding. My beloved, I know you became tired of hearing promises while still feeling pain. You became cautious about hope, careful about expectations, because disappointment taught you to protect your heart from further hurt. But this next season is different, not because life suddenly becomes perfect overnight, but because your spirit is no longer trapped the way it once was. The burden may have followed you for years, but it was never meant to follow you forever. Listen closely now. There is also something else happening beneath the surface. As this burden lifts, clarity will begin returning. The fog inside your thoughts will slowly fade. You will begin recognizing yourself again. Not the exhausted version, not the anxious version, not the survival version, but the real you underneath all the pain, the peaceful you, the awakened you, the healed you slowly emerging through every lesson, every battle, and every breakthrough. My beloved child, you have carried emotional weight that was never fully yours. You carried other people's expectations, other people's pain, other people's projections, other people's disappointments. And over time, you forgot how heavy your spirit had become. But I am teaching you now that you do not need to carry everything to prove your worth. You do not need to save everyone. You do not need to hold together relationships that constantly drain your soul. You do not need to keep bleeding emotionally just to keep others comfortable. You are allowed to heal, allowed to rest, allowed to breathe again, allowed to experience peace without guilt attached to it. My child, the burden is lifting because your spirit is finally learning surrender. Not surrender to fear, not surrender to hopelessness, but surrender to trust. Trust that I am already fighting battles you cannot see. Trust that you no longer need to carry the future entirely by yourself. Trust that healing is possible even after years of emotional exhaustion. And as trust grows, heaviness loses power. Because fear cannot dominate the heart that remembers it is protected. My beloved, there will come a moment very soon where you suddenly realize something has changed within you. The burden that once consumed your thoughts daily will no longer feel permanent. The fear that once ruled your mind will no longer sound as convincing. The pain that once defined your identity will no longer control your future. And when that moment arrives, you will understand that your breakthrough was quietly unfolding long before you could fully see it. You are not returning to the old version of yourself anymore. That season is ending. A lighter season is beginning now. A clearer season, a healthier season, a season where peace slowly replaces survival. And this is only the beginning of your restoration. But stay close now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why a door you thought was permanently closed is unexpectedly about to reopen in a completely different way. My beloved child, there is something I must tell you now that your heart has almost stopped believing. The door you thought was closed forever was not the end of your story. I know how deeply that loss affected you. I know there were dreams you buried quietly because disappointment became too painful. Dreams you stopped speaking about, prayers you stopped repeating, hopes you slowly convinced yourself to release because waiting hurt too much. You told yourself it was over. You tried accepting that certain opportunities would never return. And outwardly, you learned how to continue living. But inwardly, part of your spirit still grieved what could have been. My child, I saw every moment you mourned silently. Every time you watched someone else receive what you once prayed for. Every moment you wondered why certain blessings seemed to pass over your life. Every time you asked yourself if you had missed your chance forever. But listen carefully now. What you thought was permanent loss was often divine redirection. I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten. Joel 2:25. Do you understand what restoration truly means? Restoration is not merely replacing what was lost. It is bringing life back to places that once appeared permanently empty. And my beloved, I am not limited by what seemed finished. I can restore opportunities, restore peace, restore joy, restore confidence, restore purpose, restore dreams you buried beneath years of disappointment. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. Some doors closed because the version of you standing there was not yet prepared for what existed behind them. At the time, you interpreted the closure as rejection, but heaven saw immaturity that still needed healing, fear that still needed breaking, identity wounds that still needed transformation. If certain dreams had opened too early, you would have entered them carrying unresolved pain. And unresolved pain can sabotage blessings that were meant to heal you. My beloved child, you were asking me to reopen doors while still emotionally exhausted from old battles. You wanted restoration before healing. You wanted answers before awakening. You wanted breakthrough while still carrying fear strong enough to destroy it. But now, you are changing. The version of you emerging now is stronger, wiser, more discerning, more spiritually awake. And because of that transformation, certain opportunities are beginning to move toward your life again, but not in the same way as before. Better, healthier, more aligned with who you are becoming. Listen carefully. The enemy wanted you to believe your best days already passed, wanted you to believe it was too late, wanted you to settle emotionally, to stop expecting restoration, to stop believing new beginnings were still possible for you, because hopeless people stop preparing for miracles. But my beloved, your story did not end in the season that wounded you. That season only prepared you for a different beginning. And soon, you will understand why some things had to fall apart before something greater could emerge. Watch carefully now, because restoration often arrives quietly before it becomes visible fully. A sudden conversation, an unexpected opportunity, a reconnection, a new path opening where none previously existed, a dream returning to your spirit after years of silence. You will begin feeling hope again in areas where numbness once lived. And at first, it may frighten you, because disappointment taught you to protect your heart from expectation. You became cautious about hope, cautious about believing good things could truly happen for you again. But listen to me carefully now. Do not let old heartbreak prevent you from recognizing new beginnings. You are not the same wounded version of yourself anymore. You have grown, you have awakened, you have survived battles that strengthened your discernment. And because of that, you are now capable of carrying blessings differently than before. My beloved child, there are dreams inside you that never fully died. Even after disappointment, even after delay, even after rejection, part of your spirit still longed quietly for more. Do you know why? Because some desires were planted inside you by heaven itself. And what I plant cannot remain buried forever. You thought the silence meant denial. But sometimes silence simply means preparation is still unfolding. Listen closely now. The restoration coming into your life will not merely heal your circumstances. It will heal your perspective, because you will finally understand that delay is not always destruction. Sometimes delay is protection. Sometimes closed doors are redirections towards something deeper than what you originally imagined. And sometimes what leaves creates room for what truly belongs. My child, there were opportunities you cried over losing that would eventually have wounded your spirit deeply. People you begged to keep who secretly carried chaos into your future. Situations you thought were perfect while heaven saw hidden instability. That is why I closed certain doors firmly, not to punish you, but to preserve you. And one day, you will thank me for every painful redirection that protected your destiny. Because now you are approaching something different, something healthier, something aligned, something built not from desperation, but from healing. Watch carefully, because your spirit is about to recognize signs of restoration before your physical eyes fully see it. You will feel old excitement returning, old creativity awakening, old dreams breathing again. Not because you are returning to the past, but because your future is beginning to open differently now. My beloved, there are parts of you that almost disappeared during the hardest seasons. The hopeful part, the trusting part, the joyful part. The part that believed life could still become beautiful. But those parts were not destroyed permanently. They were hidden beneath exhaustion, and now they are beginning to rise again. This is why your spirit suddenly feels anticipation lately. Why something inside you keeps sensing change approaching. Why your heart no longer feels completely trapped in survival mode. Restoration is moving toward you, and although it may not arrive exactly the way you once imagined, it will arrive in the way your healed spirit truly needs. Listen carefully now. You are entering a season where disappointment will no longer have final authority over your expectations. You will begin hoping again, dreaming again, believing again, not blindly but wisely, because your awakening transformed you. The old version of you chased blessings from fear of emptiness. The new version of you recognizes blessings through peace, and that difference changes everything. My beloved child, the years were not wasted. The waiting was not meaningless. The tears were not forgotten. Even now, restoration is already unfolding beneath the surface in ways you cannot fully see yet. And very soon, something unexpected will happen that reminds your spirit of a truth you almost forgot. It is not too late for you, not too late for healing, not too late for peace, not too late for love, not too late for purpose, not too late for new beginnings. This is only the beginning of your restoration, but stay close now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why you are already entering a completely different spiritual season, even before the world around you fully notices the change. My beloved child, there is something happening around your life right now that your physical eyes have not fully recognized yet. You are entering a completely different spiritual season. Not someday far away, not years from now. Now, a shift has already begun. I know part of you still feels connected to the pain of the previous season. You still remember the exhaustion, the confusion, the sleepless nights, the emotional heaviness that followed you for so long. And because those struggles lasted longer than expected, part of your mind still believes you are trapped there. But listen to me carefully now. Your suffering season secretly ended before you realized it. To everything there is a season. Ecclesiastes 3:1. My child, seasons do not last forever. Winter eventually releases its grip. Night eventually gives way to morning, and the painful chapter you thought would define the rest of your life has already begun losing its authority over your spirit. You are not where you used to be anymore. Even if your external circumstances have not fully changed yet, internally, something has shifted. You think differently now. You discern differently now. You no longer tolerate what once drained your peace. You no longer chase things that once controlled your emotions. You no longer completely identify with the wounded version of yourself that entered the storm. You are changing, and that change is evidence that a new spiritual season has already begun. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. Many people miss the beginning of new seasons because they expect transformation to arrive dramatically. But often, spiritual seasons change quietly first. Before visible breakthrough arrives, your inner world begins transforming. Your desires change, your tolerance changes, your perspective changes, and suddenly the things that once felt normal begin feeling heavy, empty, or misaligned. That is exactly what has been happening inside you. You thought you were becoming emotionally unstable, but heaven calls it spiritual transition. The old season no longer fits your spirit, and the new season is slowly awakening you to higher levels of peace, discernment, and purpose. My beloved child, There is a reason your spirit feels restless whenever you try returning to old mindsets now. A reason certain conversations drain you faster than before. A reason your soul keeps craving stillness, truth, and emotional clarity. Because your spirit already senses what your conscious mind is still catching up to. You are no longer spiritually living in the same place. A shift has already begun. Listen carefully. The season of endless survival is ending. The season where fear dominated every decision is ending. The season where emotional exhaustion defined your identity is ending. The season where you constantly questioned your worth is ending. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect overnight, but because your spirit is no longer trapped there emotionally. You are awakening into a different level of awareness, and awareness changes everything. My beloved, you spent so long fighting merely to survive that peace began feeling unfamiliar to you. You became accustomed to pressure, accustomed to anxiety, accustomed to emotional heaviness. So now that healing is slowly entering your life, part of you struggles trusting it. Part of you keeps waiting for disaster to return, waiting for disappointment, waiting for another collapse. But listen to me carefully now. You do not have to remain emotionally chained to old seasons forever. The battle changed you, but it was never meant to imprison you permanently. This new season is teaching you something powerful. How to live without constant fear, how to rest without guilt, how to experience peace without immediately expecting loss. And although this learning process feels unfamiliar, it is holy transformation taking place inside your spirit. My beloved child, there are blessings approaching your life that could never have entered your previous season safely, because the old version of you was still carrying survival patterns that would have sabotaged what heaven wanted to place into your hands. But now, you are becoming ready emotionally, ready spiritually, ready mentally, not perfect, but prepared differently than before. The breaking season awakened you. The waiting season strengthened you. The warfare season sharpened your discernment. And now the rebuilding season is beginning. Listen closely now. You are going to notice increasing separation between yourself and your former identity. Things that once controlled you emotionally will begin losing power. People who once manipulated your peace will no longer affect you the same way. Fearful thoughts that once dominated your mind will begin sounding weaker. Why? Because your spirit is stepping into a different atmosphere internally. An atmosphere changes perception. My beloved, you are entering a season where clarity will begin replacing confusion. Not instantly all at once, but gradually, one realization at a time. One healed wound at a time. One peaceful moment at a time. Until one day you suddenly look back and realize the darkness no longer feels as close as it once did. That is how transformation often happens. Quietly, slowly, deeply. Until eventually, your entire identity changes without you even realizing when the shift fully occurred. A shift has already begun, and heaven needs you to stop speaking over yourself as though you are still trapped in the old season. You are not abandoned anymore. You are awakening. You are not broken permanently. You are rebuilding. You are not cursed. You are transforming. Listen carefully now. This next revelation is important. The enemy wants you emotionally attached to your past because fearful people hesitate stepping fully into their future. If he can keep you constantly identifying with old pain, you will struggle recognizing new opportunities. If he can keep you believing healing is temporary, you will fear receiving peace fully. But my child, you are no longer the same person who entered the storm. That version of you fought hard to survive. But the version emerging now is learning how to live. And there is a difference. Living requires trust. Living requires openness. Living requires believing that your future can become healthier than your past. That is why this new season feels emotionally unfamiliar sometimes. Because survival taught you to expect pain, but restoration is teaching you to recognize peace. My beloved child, you may not fully see the evidence externally yet, but spiritually, your environment is already changing. Certain doors are aligning quietly. Certain connections are shifting. Certain burdens are weakening. Certain opportunities are approaching slowly. And the more you continue healing, the clearer these movements will become. Do not rush the process. Do not fear the transition. And do not return emotionally to the old version of yourself, simply because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. You have outgrown that season. A shift has already begun. And soon, even the people around you will begin noticing that something about you feels different. The peace, the awareness, the strength, the quiet confidence growing inside your spirit. Because transformation that begins internally eventually becomes visible externally. And what is growing inside you now can no longer remain hidden forever. But stay close now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why someone around you is about to notice the change happening inside your spirit before you even speak a single word. My beloved child, the transformation happening inside you is no longer going to remain hidden. For a long time, your battles were invisible. People saw your smile, but not your struggle. They saw your silence, but not the emotional war happening inside your mind. They saw you surviving, but they never fully understood how hard you fought just to keep going. But now, something is changing. The healing growing inside your spirit is beginning to become visible, and soon, someone is going to notice. Not because you are trying harder to impress people, not because you suddenly became louder, but because peace carries a presence that cannot stay hidden forever. Ye are the light of the world. Matthew 5:14. My child, light does not need to announce itself. It simply shines, and the more your spirit heals, the more your presence changes. People can feel it before they fully understand it. Listen carefully now. There was a time when pain spoke louder than your purpose. Fear spoke louder than your confidence. Anxiety spoke louder than your peace. But now, your spirit is beginning to carry a different atmosphere. A calmer atmosphere, a wiser atmosphere, a stronger atmosphere. And others are going to recognize it. You may not fully see the change yourself yet, because transformation often happens gradually from within. But those around you will begin sensing it, the way you respond differently, the way you no longer react emotionally to everything, the way your silence now feels peaceful instead of wounded, the way your energy no longer chases validation desperately. My beloved, people can recognize when someone has survived darkness and emerged stronger, and that strength is beginning to grow visibly within you. Listen closely now, this next part matters deeply. The authority developing inside your spirit did not come from easy seasons. It came from survival, from suffering, from battles nobody else saw, from nights where you almost broke but somehow kept going anyway. You earned wisdom through pain, discernment through betrayal, strength through endurance. And now, that inner transformation is becoming visible externally. You are changing. The wounded version of you once entered rooms searching for acceptance. But the healed version entering now carries quiet confidence. The fearful version constantly over-explained itself. But the awakened version understands peace does not need constant defense. The exhausted version tried to save everyone, but the restored version recognizes that protecting your spirit is holy wisdom. And people notice those shifts even when you say nothing about them. My beloved child, someone around you is going to notice that your energy feels different. They may not understand why. They may not know what changed. But they will sense that something inside you has become calmer, clearer, and stronger. Because healing changes presence. Awakened souls carry themselves differently. Listen carefully, this is not arrogance, this is restoration. For too long you doubted yourself, questioned your value, questioned your worth. questioned whether anything meaningful could truly emerge from your painful seasons. But heaven never doubted what I placed inside you, and now the evidence is beginning to emerge, not through perfection, but through peace. My beloved, the greatest sign of transformation is not becoming someone loud or impressive. It is becoming someone no longer controlled by constant inner chaos. And that change is already happening inside you. You are learning how to pause before reacting, learning how to protect your peace, learning how to walk away from emotional manipulation without feeling guilty, learning how to trust your discernment instead of ignoring your spirit, learning how to stop abandoning yourself just to keep temporary people comfortable. That is growth, that is healing, that is awakening. And others will begin recognizing it. Listen closely now. There are people who once underestimated you because they only knew the wounded version of you. They encountered you during survival seasons, during emotionally exhausted seasons, during seasons where your confidence was buried beneath pain. But the version of you emerging now is different, stronger internally, more grounded spiritually, less desperate for approval. And when those people encounter this new version of you, they will feel the difference immediately, because suffering refined you, not destroyed you. My beloved child, your peace is becoming visible. Your discernment is becoming visible. Your emotional maturity is becoming visible. Even your silence carries different energy now. Before, your silence came from fear of rejection. Now, your silence often comes from wisdom. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself constantly to people committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer chase every connection that leaves. You no longer panic every time uncertainty appears. Why? Because your spirit has changed. A shift has already begun, and heaven is slowly allowing the outer world to witness what has been transforming privately inside you. Listen carefully now. This next revelation is important. Not everyone will celebrate your transformation. Some people preferred the wounded version of you because it was easier to control. Some preferred the insecure version because it made them feel more comfortable. Some preferred the emotionally exhausted version because it tolerated behavior your healed spirit no longer accepts. And when your healing becomes visible, certain people may become uncomfortable around your growth. Do not fear that. Growth always reveals alignment. The right people feel inspired by your healing. The wrong people feel threatened by it. My beloved, you are no longer shrinking your spirit to fit inside spaces that dishonor your peace. And that quiet confidence is changing the way people perceive you. Without realizing it, you have begun carrying authority, not worldly authority built on pride, but spiritual authority built through survival, wisdom, humility, and healing. The kind of authority that calms rooms, the kind of authority that discerns truth quickly, the kind of authority that no longer panics during storms because it already survived darker seasons before. And others can feel it. Listen closely now. Soon there will be moments where people unexpectedly open up to you. Seek your advice. Trust your presence. Feel safe around your energy. Not because you became perfect, but because pain deepened your compassion. You understand brokenness now. You understand emotional exhaustion now. You understand silent battles now. And that understanding gives your spirit depth many people never develop. My beloved child, you are becoming living proof that healing is possible, that survival is possible, that awakening is possible even after deep suffering. And whether you realize it yet or not, your transformation will quietly inspire others who still feel trapped inside darkness. Because light naturally reveals what hope looks like. Ye are the light of the world. Do not hide the peace I am growing inside you now. Do not apologize for the boundaries protecting your healing. Do not feel guilty for becoming emotionally healthier. You prayed for restoration, and restoration changes people. This is only the beginning. The world around you is slowly beginning to recognize the transformation heaven started within you long ago. But stay close now, because what I am about to reveal next will explain why releasing the pain of your past is the final step before your new season fully opens. My beloved child, before this message ends, there is one final thing I need you to do. Release the past. Not tomorrow, not someday when the pain completely disappears. Tonight. Because the greatest prison surrounding your life was never only your circumstances. It was the pain you kept carrying long after the season ended. Forget those things which are behind. Philippians 3:13, Macha. I know why you held on to it for so long. The memories, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the disappointment, the moments that changed you deeply. Part of you believed that holding on to the pain would somehow protect you from being hurt again. So you replayed conversations, revisited old wounds, carried old fears into new seasons, and slowly, the past became heavier than the future inside your spirit. But listen to me carefully now. You cannot fully step into the new season while emotionally living inside the old one. The door ahead of you cannot open completely while your hands remain tightly gripping what already ended. My beloved, there are still moments where you mentally return to places I already called you out of. Places of rejection, places of abandonment, places where your worth was questioned repeatedly, places where your spirit became exhausted trying to earn love that should have been given freely. And every time you revisit those wounds emotionally, you reopen pain I have been trying to heal. Listen closely now. This next part matters deeply. The enemy no longer needs the old season itself to control you. If he can keep the memory of it alive inside your spirit, because unresolved pain creates invisible chains, chains of fear, chains of distrust, chains of self-protection so strong that they prevent healing from fully entering your life. You escaped certain situations physically, but emotionally, part of you remained trapped there, and that is why peace still felt difficult sometimes. Not because your future was cursed, but because your spirit was still carrying yesterday's wounds into today's reality. My beloved child, you survived the battle, but survival alone is not the same as healing. Healing begins the moment you stop building your identity around what hurt you. You are not merely the person who was betrayed, not merely the person abandoned, not merely the person rejected, not merely the person who struggled. Those things happened to you, but they are not your deepest identity. Your identity is greater than your pain. And tonight, I need you to stop introducing yourself to life through old wounds. Listen carefully. There are people from your past who no longer physically control your life, yet emotionally they still occupy space inside your spirit. Their words still echo inside your thoughts. Their rejection still influences your confidence. Their betrayal still affects your ability to trust, and without realizing it, you allowed past pain to shape your future expectations. But my child, the new season cannot fully bloom while old emotional roots remain buried beneath the surface. Something must be released tonight, not because your pain was insignificant, but because your future matters too much to remain chained to old sorrow. My beloved, I know part of you fears letting go because pain became familiar, predictable, and strangely, familiar suffering often feels safer than unfamiliar healing. At least the pain you carried was known. Healing requires trust. Trust that peace will not disappear suddenly. Trust that love can exist without manipulation. Trust that your future does not have to repeat your past endlessly. And that trust feels vulnerable. But listen carefully now. You are safe enough to heal. You are safe enough to stop carrying every wound like armor. You are safe enough to breathe without preparing constantly for disaster. The battle season changed you, but it does not have permission to imprison you forever. My beloved child, there are tears still trapped inside your spirit. Tears from moments you never fully processed. Tears from disappointments you buried because life forced you to keep moving. Tears from pretending to be strong while breaking silently inside. And tonight, I need you to let those emotions rise without shame, because what is honestly released can finally be healed. You do not need to pretend anymore, not with me. I saw every hidden wound long before you spoke about it aloud. I saw the heartbreak you minimized, the exhaustion you concealed, the loneliness you laughed through, and I stayed beside you through all of it. But now, the season of carrying silent pain alone is ending. Listen closely now. This next revelation is important. The real breakthrough was never only external, it was internal freedom. Freedom from constantly reliving old wounds. Freedom from expecting abandonment everywhere. Freedom from believing your past permanently damaged your future. Freedom from identifying with pain more than purpose. That is the true release your spirit has been craving. My beloved, you have changed. You are no longer the same fragile version of yourself that first entered the storm. You survived. You awakened. You healed in ways you still do not fully recognize yet. And because of that transformation, you no longer need to keep carrying emotional survival weapons into peaceful seasons. The war inside your spirit is ending, but you must choose release. You must choose to stop feeding old pain with constant remembrance. You must choose to stop reopening wounds heaven is trying to close gently. You must choose to believe that your future deserves more attention than your past. Write yes if you are leaving the old season behind tonight. My beloved child, this is not about pretending the past never happened. It happened. The pain was real, the betrayal was real, the loneliness was real. But your future is real too. And the future I prepared for you cannot fully enter while grief remains permanently enthroned inside your spirit. Listen carefully. You are not dishonoring your past by healing from it. You are honoring your survival by refusing to remain imprisoned there forever. There is life ahead of you, peace ahead of you, joy ahead of you, connection ahead of you, clarity ahead of you. And none of those things require you to continue bleeding emotionally just to prove your wounds mattered. Your wounds mattered, but your healing matters too. My beloved, tonight is the closing of an old chapter, not because every scar disappears instantly, but because your spirit is finally choosing hope over hopelessness, choosing trust over fear, choosing healing over endless emotional survival. And that choice changes everything. Take a deep breath now. Feel the heaviness beginning to loosen. Feel the old sorrow losing authority. Feel the exhaustion slowly leaving your spirit. A shift has already begun. You are not carrying the old version of yourself into the next season anymore. The fearful version, the broken version, the constantly apologizing version, the emotionally trapped version. That season is ending now, and what comes next will reveal just how much transformation has already taken place inside you all along. My beloved child, before this message ends, I need you to understand something that will change the way you see your life forever. Your new season has already started, not when everything becomes perfect, not when every prayer is answered visibly, not someday far away in the future. It already began. While you were listening, while you were healing, while you were crying quietly through the nights nobody else understood, while you were surviving battles that almost convinced you to give up completely, the transformation already started long before you realized it. Behold, I have set before thee an open door. Revelation 3:8. My child, the door is already opening, even now. You may not fully see it yet because your eyes were trained for so long to focus on survival instead of possibility. Pain taught you to expect disappointment. Fear taught you to prepare for loss. Heartbreak taught you to guard your spirit constantly. But heaven is teaching you something different now. How to recognize new beginnings. Listen carefully. You thought this message found you by accident, but this moment was arranged long ago. Because I knew there would come a day when your spirit became ready to hear the truth about your life. The truth that you are not abandoned, not forgotten, not cursed, not permanently broken. You are chosen, protected, awakening, and entering a new season that your old self could never have carried properly. My beloved, everything you survived was shaping you for this moment. The silence shaped you. The loneliness shaped you. The betrayal shaped you. The waiting shaped you. Even the seasons you hated most were building strength inside your spirit that your future will one day require. Nothing was wasted. Not the tears, not the heartbreak, not the confusion, not the nights you almost gave up. I was there through all of it, quietly protecting you while transformation unfolded beneath the surface. And now, you are beginning to see what heaven saw all along. You survived because your story was never meant to end in darkness. Listen closely now. This next revelation is important. The greatest miracle was never only the blessing approaching your life. The greatest miracle was the person you became while surviving the storm. The old version of you would not recognize the strength inside you now. The wisdom, the discernment, the emotional awareness, the deeper connection to truth. You changed. And that change is sacred, because suffering could have hardened your heart permanently. But instead, your spirit awakened. You became softer in wisdom, not weaker. Stronger in peace, not pride. More discerning, not more fearful. That is transformation. My beloved child, there are moments ahead of you that will suddenly make everything clearer. Moments where you will look back and finally understand why certain doors closed, why certain people left, why certain delays happened, why certain battles became necessary. And when those realizations arrive, you will stop calling yourself unlucky. You will recognize that heaven was guiding you through hidden preparation all along. A shift has already begun. The heaviness is lifting. The confusion is weakening. The old chains are breaking, and your spirit is becoming lighter because truth is finally replacing fear. Listen carefully. You are not entering this new season empty-handed. You are carrying wisdom now, discernment now, boundaries now, spiritual awareness now. You are no longer the same fragile soul that once accepted emotional chaos simply because you feared loneliness. You are no longer the version of yourself that confused survival with living. You are becoming someone different, someone healed, someone awake, someone capable of carrying peace without sabotaging it through fear. My beloved, the next chapter of your life will not look like the last one, not because storms never return, but because you are no longer spiritually asleep inside them. You now recognize my voice differently. You recognize your worth differently. You recognize toxic patterns differently. You recognize your own spirit differently. And that awareness changes your future. Listen closely now. There will still be moments where fear tries revisiting your thoughts. Moments where old memories attempt pulling you backward emotionally. Moments where uncertainty tries testing your trust again. But now you know something you did not know before. You survived every season that tried to destroy you. And if you survived that darkness, then there is nothing ahead stronger than the purpose growing inside you now. My beloved child, do not return to the emotional prison I already led you out of. Do not shrink yourself again just to fit inside spaces that dishonor your spirit. Do not reopen doors that heaven closed for your protection. Do not keep introducing yourself to life through your old wounds. That chapter is ending, and your new season has already started. Even now, while you listen to these final words, something inside your spirit feels different, lighter, calmer, more hopeful. That feeling is real, because transformation does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it begins quietly. One revelation at a time, one healed wound at a time, one surrendered fear at a time. Until suddenly, you realize you are no longer emotionally trapped where you used to be. My beloved, you are seen. Every hidden tear was seen. Every silent battle was seen. Every exhausted prayer was seen. You were never invisible to me. You are chosen, not because you became perfect, but because I called you long before fear ever touched your life. You are protected, even during seasons when you felt alone, even during battles you did not understand, even during moments when darkness whispered that hope was gone. I never left you, and now you are awakening spiritually in ways that will change the direction of your entire future. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of your restoration, the beginning of deeper peace, deeper wisdom, deeper healing, deeper purpose. And one day soon, you will realize that this message marked the moment. Your spirit finally stopped surviving and started truly living again. So now, my beloved child, lift your head, take a deep breath, and step forward without fear, because the door ahead of you is already opening. Type Amen, share this message with someone who needs hope, and subscribe so you do not miss the next confirmation God sends. Your new season has already begun.